it's been a drain on our time, on our energy, and on money. So a lot of money that could have gone into good things at the sewer authority has instead gone into lawyers' fees. And we're really looking forward to wrapping that up and getting back to work together and taking some of the projects that have been slowed down or halted and seeing if we can't get those back underway, because the coastside and the people of the coastside deserve the protection that the sewer authority is there to provide. So that's my president's statement. Tune in tomorrow night. We may have a little more on that. And let's see. Now's an opportunity for oral comments for things that are not on the agenda. I see Catherine.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, I see Michelle Dragony has tuned in tonight, and give a thanks to Michelle for publishing on Coastside Buzz the entire tentative ruling. So if people want to read what the judge said, it's right there. It's down about 4 stories. She's been very busy today. Good stories, mind you, but if you want to read the tentative ruling and see what the judge's thoughts on this matter were, that's where you will find it. And it's also been posted by Scott on Nextdoor. So you can find it there too. It's so wonderful to have digital information easily available to the folks on the coast. It helps keep things clear. Thank you.
Have you been able to find the transcripts yet from the meeting?
They're not coming for about 2 weeks.
Okay, cool.
Transcripts take some time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands.
Sorry.
Well, I see Michelle's hand now, but
no, it's just
right.
wrong button.
Okay, well, with that, let's get on to new business item 1, the Elected Community Service Academy Session 2, candidate application and board election procedures. The heart of tonight's meeting. Allison and Clemens, you want to take it?
Sure, I will go ahead and give me a second here while I get my screen shared and set this up, because it'll take me a minute to start the actual slideshow and get this arranged so I can see you and see the slideshow. So hang on one moment. Ah, that was the wrong button. I have to switch this over so I can see that, see you guys and see the chat. All right, so we are doing our second Elected Community Service Academy tonight. That's the purpose. My name is Allison Castema. I am assisting tonight by moderating this session of on elected community service. We're aiming for about 45 minutes of presentation with some questions, welcome, and open discussion at the end. We hope to be off air or done with this item certainly by 8 o'clock. So this is the second of a series of what we envisioned as 3 sessions for an academy. Basically to present and promote the concept of the culture of community service here in the Montara Moss Beach community. Our directors are going to be speaking tonight they have served in elected roles, not only just here at Montara, but in other roles, some of them. And they're basically honored to have the public's trust placed in their hands, and basically their abilities are being used to make wise decisions for the community. They recognize as well that succession planning is an important part of being in this role, and that is really what we're here to do, is engage others to take on leadership roles, which is critical to the long-term welfare of local community services like Montara Water and Sanitary District. You should be able to basically chat to me or to Clemens during the presentation. There's a little chat button somewhere on your screen. Please go ahead and type a question to me. You can also raise your hand and we'll answer any questions as we go along. It's not too formal, but we do have a few slides to get through. So please feel free to ask a question whenever it comes to mind. So we're going to turn this over to Clemens, because we always like to start and make sure we have a basis in understanding what the Montara Water and Sanitary District does. So Clemens, you want to take this slide and the next?
Yeah, thank you, Allison. So my name is Clemens Heldmeyer. I'm the General Manager of the Montara Water and Sanitary District. And I first wanted to thank you, Allison, for helping us prepare this and taking the brunt of the talking tonight. It's great to be in a different role for once on board meetings and relax a little bit. Real briefly about our district. We essentially have three functions. We provide the sewer service in the area of Montara and Moss Beach. In 2003, we added the water service. So we purchased the entire water system that was prior privately owned. And together with the sewer powers, essentially comes the oversight over garbage collection. And we handle that through our contract with Recology. So these are the three main functions that the Montara Water and Sanitary District has. And I would like to encourage everyone to look on our website under the news tab. So we have a tab first where the new news are up. But if you go to the actual news tab, you can find recordings of a tour of our sewer system, as well as a tour of our water system. And I encourage everyone to watch those two special meetings. We really want everybody to get a better understanding of what it is that we're doing. And Allison, maybe you can just go over to the next slide. That's really where we explain how this all looks like. But in essence, what we're here to do is we're making sure that the environment is protected, meaning we collect and transport the sewage to the centralized treatment plant, and ensure that the ocean, the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, all that remains safe, that our backyards remain clean. And on the water side, of course, we're ensuring that your drinking water is safe. And to do all that, we have a staff of 7 people, and are pretty much busy. We're very, very busy doing that. There's a lot that goes along with that: sample taking, fixing leaks, responding to customer inquiries, billing, administration. All of that is handled very locally here at the Montara Water and Sanitary District. And with that, I want to give it back to Allison to continue with today's topic.
Great. Thank you, Clemens. Just overview here, we always try and remind everyone what various roles are available in the community. If you're residing in the Montara Water and Sanitary District, you have some options for where you could seek to serve in an elected community service role. Of course, the board here tonight for Montara Water and Sanitary District, but there's also, of course, the Unified School District, the Coastside Fire Protection District, the Mid-Coast Community Council that has 7 members. Many of these are 4-year terms that are elected. And if you want to roll that up to some of the larger elected offices in the county or for the state, you, of course, are looking at San Mateo County's District Number 3. Don Horsley is the representative. We have the California Senate, 13th Senate District, and the 22nd Assembly District that are also representing this area. So elected office is always frequently a place where you can have the most impact. Decisions that are made at a local level tend to have a direct touch on the community that you serve and reside in. So I personally have worked with a lot of elected, small elected districts and officials, and I really see that's where we see a lot of impact, because those decisions are being made with your dollars right here in the community. So when we look at what tonight's focus is, which is the election process for prospective candidates, our last session really focused on what the role of the board members and what they tackled. So things like bi-monthly meetings for this district where policy is set, resolutions or ordinances are enacted, approval of payments to vendors, review and approval of the budget, setting rates, establishing sewer or connection charges, hiring staff, approving contracts, and other necessary actions that really enable the district to do the work that they do. All those actions have to be taken in public and have to be listed on an agenda so that the board can have that official public role in making those decisions. So when you look at trying to move forward to take a position on an elected board in the community, the first thing we're going to do is walk through tonight what the requirements are. We're also going to go through what the official candidate filings are. So their candidacy, statement, campaign finance filings. And then there's a whole aspect to running a campaign, what you're going to do, why you're doing it, how you're reaching the people who will be voting in the election. I'm going to run through all these different topics, and we're going to have the directors speak interspersed amongst them with some personal experiences. So the best resources, if you're looking to basically run for an office, is certainly San Mateo County elections. They have a very specific section for candidates. You can find it here on this the sidebar of their website. We're going to suggest that you definitely bookmark that and take a look at it. We're also going to mention that there is the Fair Political Practices Commission. Most of the filings that you'll hear about tonight can be filed through the county elections office, but the FPPC is part of this process, and we'll go through the forms that are required for that as well. And then lastly, there is a page on the on Montara's district website where you can look about the board election procedures for the district. As I mentioned, there's some very useful information on the San Mateo County elections website. There's a candidate guide that's always available and very useful to download. The one for the November general election, November 8th, 2022 is not yet up. I think what I saw is it is up for the June election, which is the primary or the other election this year. So everything focused right now on that election and calendar, but you will find a candidate guide there for the November election, which is of course when the board here would be open. You know, basically 3 of those positions are coming up for election. So what's required? Candidates must meet requirements for the position that they seek. It's typically you have to be 18 years old and a registered voter. I always think this is funny because I don't think you can register to vote unless you're 18. So you're kind of a de facto pair, but you do have to be registered to vote. For Montara, to be on the board here, you have to be a registered voter and reside within the boundaries of the district. And you'll note we have our district boundary map right here. It's slightly different than the other map you've seen because we do provide some services close by, but this is the actual map you have to be residing within to basically serve or seek a position on the board in an elected process, or even in a non-elected process. As an appointee, you would need to reside within the district. So when are the elections? Montara consolidated their elections with the general election in 2015. That means that they hold elections every even-numbered year in November. They're consolidated with the county general elections. This helps to keep the costs down. The next election, as I mentioned, is November 8th, 2022. The board members are elected at large for a 4-year term. They're even-numbered. They're elected in the even-numbered years. So this November will be 3 district positions open for election. And so that's Director Harvey's role, Director Lohman, and Director Decker. So again, and you'll see this a little bit later in the presentation, San Mateo County is the election official for this district. They will have all the paperwork needed. We really recommend that you do, in fact, plan to go visit them. I think when we get here to the next page, the first thing you should do is really make an appointment to declare your candidacy. This will enable you to go and visit and see many of the forms, get your questions answered. It's also important that you mark your calendars. There's a very defined candidate filing period. It opens July 18th, should close August 12th. Now that's a defined period of time prior to the November election. The actual November 2022 election calendar is not yet actually posted because again, they're focused on June, but they will post a calendar for November, and these dates should be accurate because again, that candidacy period is open 113 days before the election and then closes 88 days before the election. There are some adjustments that occur if incumbent is running or not running, but typically these dates are the dates you should really take note of. I did put in here as well, San Mateo County Registrar of Voters in the Elections Division is the election official for special districts, the school district for Montara. But if you were to run for a city position, that can be a city clerk, that's your contact. Now that shouldn't apply for anyone in the Montara area, but just to make note of that, we want to make sure people were cognizant of that. So I did take a page from that website that you can get a candidate appointment by going to the website. You need to go to the San Mateo branch and select candidate services. But I also thought it was interesting. They offer election office tours. Excuse me, I don't know what's happening with COVID and that, but I thought it would be a very interesting thing that you can take a tour of the election office, see how your ballots and how election services are managed. Certainly not something that everybody fully understands, and it's something that's a very important part of managing the life that we live and the cities and areas that we live in. So, Jim, I was going to call on our director, Jim Harvey, to just give us a little perspective of what he recalls about what was important to remember when you're considered being an elected candidate or running for an election, and what do you recall about the process to file for candidacy?
Well, thank you. A couple of things, just a short couple of things. One is that when you go to the election office, they'll give you a calendar which has all the election dates. You know, there are deadlines to turn in a candidate statement, to give them a check, to fill this form, that form. So they'll give you. You'll have to drive to the elections office, and they're really nice there. They're nice people. It's a nice place, and they're very kind and helpful. And they'll give you, the main thing to get is this little calendar they give you with all the deadlines on this one page. And I thought that was extremely helpful. So that's the main thing. I just a few comments about running for office, and that is, in this community, it's always been a pleasure to run for office or re-election for me. The people here are very nice. When I've walked door to door, everyone is polite and they're responsive and they appreciate what you're doing. It's not like canvassing door to door anywhere else. You know, the people here we're all together. We're a community. We're all on the same team. We're fighting for the same thing. So people are very welcoming to you when you go to door. It's a pleasure. It's always been a pleasure to do that. So campaigning is a fun thing. And I just want to make one more comment, and that is, you know, it's a pleasure to serve. I've been here for a while. It's a pleasure to serve the community. I ran in the first place because I thought, instead of sitting back and letting, at that time, the private water company do stuff to us or do bad things to us, you know, would get involved and have control in the community. So it's a pleasure to run and to serve the community and to help steer what direction the community is going to go in. We have challenges. You know, and I just wanted to say that there's no, everyone on the coast side is very collegial. There's no harsh words spoken back and forth to other districts and so forth. So, you know, it's a positive experience. There are no bad things that happen. Everyone is friendly and supportive. We do have differences of opinion, as Scott alluded to in the lawsuit, but even then, we treat each other with respect, and so I encourage people to step forward and run for office and participate. You'll be welcomed, and it's very rewarding, and the people in this district will appreciate it too. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I would like to add that, I thought it was that the board really helped form this concept of elected community service, because it's very much that. You're serving your community through an elected role, and I think it's actually a great way to get to know your community by walking to be a candidate and walking door to door. It's certainly probably the best I would imagine, candidate experience, as opposed to try and tackle something as large as, say, San Mateo County district, where it's so large, it would be really challenging to reach everyone. Right. All right, I'm going to move us forward. So we did speak a bit about what it is, what's required filing to be a candidate. There are many forms, not too many, actually. I mean, there's several, but I don't want to say that there's 100 forms, but there's about 6 forms that need to be completed in order to file for candidacy. You do want to have them accurate and correct. So we're going to walk through a few of them with some pointers and again, some thoughts from board members, but you've got to contact San Mateo County Elections to get these forms. In 2020, certainly during COVID, they were accepted via email, but we do expect folks that, again, going to the elections office in person is probably going to resolve many of your questions and ensure that you have the right forms and the right understanding of the forms so that you can get them completed accurately. We'll go through this. We have a declaration of candidacy, a ballot designation worksheet, a candidate statement of qualification that will have that's the form, and you will attach your statement, the standard employment verification, a permit to post personal information, because as a candidate, the election office needs to post information about you, and a code of ethics that you can choose to sign. These are all part of the materials that come to you when you go and indicate to the election office you want to be a candidate. So ballot designation, and I'll show you the form here in a second. The designation is basically your short descriptor of who you are and what your profession has been. There's actually a worksheet for this. And then the candidate statement. So these are the items that you will see on the ballot and in the voter pamphlet, voter guide. These are due by the candidate filing deadline 88 days ahead of election. And again, typically you would deliver this in person and be the person submitting it, because sometimes there are little changes that are required when the forms are reviewed, and you want to be, as the candidate, the one that provides the final answer. So you don't want to have someone submit that for you. And these forms look something like this, not terribly, it looks a little complicated, but not terribly. Scott thankfully provided his samples from 2020. So again, you can see this is a November 3rd, 2020 form. They will be specific to each election. You need to indicate what, your name and what you want your ballot designation to be, what position you're filing for, and provide signatures. There's also this ballot designation worksheet, which really goes into, not on this side, but on the second part of this. You're going to designate what your designation is, your current principal profession, your vocation, your occupation, and it's going to be your responsibility to justify what you're proposing to put on the ballot. So you will, on this next page, need to provide documentation or evidence or some kind of a second party to basically justify that role that you're claiming, so that it is an accurate role and it has basically documentation to indicate that if you're an incumbent, that you have documentation you've actually served in that role. So that's one part of this, to make sure that when you're listed on the ballot with your role, your position, that it's validated by the elections office before it's published on the ballot. You're going to also provide, as mentioned, a candidate statement. It's a candidate statement. It has a strict word count limit. It will give you directions on what is counted as one word or not. Say you're running for Montara Water and Sanitary District, that may count, I believe, as one word in your ballot statement. So this is your 200-word statement to say why you want the position or why you should be elected to the position. It may enable you to also state what you hope to do in that role. So this is a very important sort of profile of who you are and what you want to achieve and why you're seeking the office. It's the main way people will find out who you are if you don't have an opportunity to meet them through walking precincts or walking door to door. So there's also a character-based name form, which is, frankly, if you had a name that was in a character form, so I can think of, as an example, Chinese. If you had a name that wanted to be represented in that form, you have an opportunity to present that and have that available to you in the ballot pamphlet. So there's a separate form for that. And I did want to mention here that there is sample ballot, official voter information, the sign-off process. This should be accurate to the statement and the information you provide on those forms. And then there is a statement fee calculation. We'll talk a little bit at the end of the presentation or the later part about the cost of running a campaign. This candidate statement is part of that. And I think Again, we'll give a little bit of an estimate of what we think some reasonable costs are or some cost considerations when you're running, but filing a candidate fee is definitely one of the obligations. When you submit the forms, you have to provide cash or a check at the time of submittal of these forms. And again, within that candidacy window that we showed earlier, July to August. So lastly, on this topic, don't wait until the last minute to file these documents. I think some of the directors will recount some back and forth to make sure things are accurate and completed. They don't provide appointments on the last day of the filing period. You do want to make sure that you get it in and submit it, and there's time to check it and fix anything if you need to after the review. Again, after you file, there should be a roster of candidates, which would indicate that you've made it onto the ballot. If it doesn't indicate that if you're not on there, it would indicate you're not qualified, and you can call the filing officer, again, the elections office, to see what you have to do to get qualified. It's always a double check before the filing period closes. So Peter, Director Decker, I was going to ask you to comment now. As folks may recall, you joined as an appointee and then you actually ran in 2020. So what do you recall about the filing process?
I recall that the documentation initially was emailed to me, and that there was a lot of emails going back and forth in regards to how exactly to fill out the form. So I found it easier to go to the election office and talk to the individual who had sent me the email, and thus complete the form together without the exchanges back and forth. And I found it to be extremely easy. The people at the election office are extremely helpful. They take you through the steps one by one. They fill out the form together with you. And I couldn't be more pleased to have found that the person who helped me for it to be so easy. But initially, I was an appointee, and as an appointee, it was even easier because I was asked to fill in the period for a board member who had left. And the only thing that was needed was an interview with the board. And there were not many candidates volunteering. And I was picked, and that was an easy process. I would say that I was very much welcomed on the board, and I went then in 2020 with the election process, whereas in 2019 I was an appointee, and I have been very pleased with the work that is being done by the board. I feel extremely welcome on the board, and I would welcome anybody now to come again to us and join us.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, you had not a bad process to join the board, and I think you've definitely contributed a great deal and sort of match well with the rest of the board members who've served in roles longer.
Also, I was lucky enough. I was lucky enough not to have to go through the knock on the door process, simply because I was unopposed in the election process, and that was very convenient.
Yeah, time saver for you and for the district, I think, as well.
Yes.
Financial, not having to pay election costs. So thank you so much. Great. All right. Well, I'm going to keep us going here. So there's another element to the filings. They do tend to come to you through the elections office, but I did mention FPPC. So the Fair Political Practice Commission is really a state office that is around to ensure that the public is aware of contributions made to candidates and where their financial interests and interactions may overlap potentially with the work that they're doing in a public office. So it's a form that there are forms that come into play when you're running for office and when you're in office. And I'll walk through those as well right now. So When you're considering being a candidate, the first thing you need to do is file a Form 501, a candidate intention statement. So that is basically your initial form that you file. Again, the elections office typically provides this, and you can file these through the elections office in order to get them to the FPPC. There's also a statement of economic interest, Form 700. Form 700 for those folks in an elected role or in some other positions that are public agencies, these are annual forms. So Peter, I think that was one that you had to fill out as an appointee even when you first joined. That would be the one form that you had to fill out, not a candidate form, but a typical form that basically shows where your economic interests, where your business dealings, if you have any investments that would overlap with the role that you're serving. Form 501, again, this candidate intention statement, some questions on whether you're going to, this is more of a state candidate expenditure limit, but typically information that the FPPC wants to have on hand just for all the candidates seeking office. So Form 700, again, this is typical, and it will be a form that you fill out not just as a candidate, but every year that you are serving in the role. I actually fill out a Form 700 because of my role in various work. And again, it does request where you have your investments, where your income comes from. And it is really available to the public. This information on many of the campaign finance is available so that people can see where influences come and where conflicts might arise. So it's disclosures to the public. So Catherine, before I go deep into further parts of this, I wanted to ask you to just reflect on running a campaign, because I will go into a bit of the campaign filings for the FPPC, but we thought we'd get your perspective first on, did you raise money? What were the most successful campaign tactics I think that you had when you have run a campaign in the community? Oh, and you're muted still.
Sorry.
There you go.
There we go. The most successful campaign tactic is making yourself known to the voters. And there's lots of details on how to do that. But the best way in Montara and Moss Beach, and frankly, is to meet people. And I've worked on state assembly and state Senate campaigns. And even in those cases, the candidates for these large districts would go down to BART stations and meet people and hand out flyers as people were getting off the BART station or the BART trains and the train stations. And I have to say, I was shy. I know those of you who know me are going, what? But you discover that people are really interested and care about people who care about the community, no matter how big or how little the district is. I have typically chosen for my own campaigns to spend as little money as possible and as much time as possible meeting people. But that was all pre-COVID. And so for Montara and Moss Beach, it's typically meeting people at the post offices. And you have to pay attention to the rules that the postmaster has about not annoying people or taking up sidewalk space that is the post office's right. You have to be on the public spaces. There are other ways to meet people, and really you just go out and you say, hi, I'm running for, and fill in the blank. And it's much better to meet people than to try and spend money. We've had people spend large amounts of money on campaigns for this district, but the folks of Montara and Moss Beach really want to know who is going to be representing them, and a slick flyer doesn't say much. So it's just the campaign is getting out and meeting people however you can. Now, again, I'm not sure about this COVID. I'm working with a friend who is campaigning for the Board of Supervisors, and she's just out there in her mask saying hello and meeting people throughout the district for this district. And that's been redistricted. So I think it goes from Pacifica and includes some of down to Santa Cruz and includes some of the east side of the county. That said, I think that it is the meeting people that makes a difference. Getting endorsements, that's nice, but they can only vote for you. Anybody who endorses you can only vote for you once anyway. So meet more people. And like I say, money, you can raise funds. If you raise funds, you have an obligation, if it's over $1,000, to report it. And then you need a treasurer. So you need to follow the rules.
Exactly. Yes. And that is part of what I wanted to reflect on your campaign, because I will go through right now what the filings are that are required if you raise money for your campaign. So definitely I've heard from some of the directors that raising money for a campaign was not necessary because of the small size of the district, but there are some costs. So I will go through those as has been mentioned. So if you're going to run, their next choice, once you've done your Form 501, your Form 700, is to decide whether you're doing a short form and you're not planning to raise more than $2,000, or if you plan to raise above $2,000. So again, the joy of Montara Water and Sanitary in that area, you typically, hopefully, could do this without raising that much money. It's less of a burden to raise money and less of the fundraising aspect of a campaign, and more focused on meeting your neighbors and getting out in the community to find folks. And then you will have certainly less forms to file, which is a bonus. As I mentioned, those campaign finance disclosures, they all need to be provided electronically to the elections division. They can be filed there. They are available, the campaign finance reports, the public can view them, and that is the purpose, so that folks can see what has been raised by what candidates or committees or office holders, in order to ensure that there's full disclosure of where financing are coming. So that's the purpose of those FEPC filings. There is a calendar for this as well. If you were to raise money, you would need to do a semi-annual report. You would need to do within 24 hours if you raised a large sum, $1,000 or more. There's pre-election filings, the first one in September, the second one in October, and then another semi-annual if you maintain that committee. And that is part of organizing a campaign fundraising effort. You have filing obligations. You have filing obligations after the election to either close out or continue to file, so that people know where that money, how much money there is and where it's been expended. I'm going to walk through just a couple of concepts about what budget might be like. As I mentioned, for Montara, this area, your candidate statement fee could be about $200. That's based on how many ballots and voter guides are published, and various calculation by the elections office. But typically you have to provide them a check or some form of payment in the beginning. And if you don't, I know that some of the incumbents, when there wasn't opposition, you didn't have to pay, that fee was less because there wasn't as much material in the voter guide, given the election being uncontested. So there's an opportunity also as a candidate to purchase voter data. And I'll go through this in a minute. What does it mean to get voter data? And I did give just a couple of concepts about printing materials. And I know this cost is even less if you have a printer at your home. So when the district does some type of printing to produce a half sheet sort of postcard, it can be about $900 for a two-sided printing publication from a printer. And if you needed to mail that, that's about $2,000. So if you were thinking about mailing to the residences within the district to the voters, you might be looking at an expense of about $2,000 to do a mailing. You might want to consider how many mailings you would do. Again, I think a lot of the experience is you don't have to go this route. You might want to have at least something printed in hand. And as I think Catherine told me previously, sometimes they printed, some of those materials have been printed at your own homes or your own printers, so you can provide those at a much less cost than, say, going to a commercial printer. So when we talk about voter data, because that is an expense, it's an amount of money that you can expend. It does provide you, and this is one of those choices during the campaign. Many campaigns focus very highly on voters to ensure they're reaching the people who are participating in the election. Voter data can provide you information on how often voters have voted. It'll just give a record of whether they've voted in the last election or in the last 6 elections. So you can determine who is most likely to vote. And if you have limited time, you can direct your efforts or your mailings or any kind of those things towards those folks that are actually most likely to vote in the election. It can be a very useful tool to have that information in hand to know who you're trying to reach. Because unfortunately, as we know, not everyone who resides in a district or an agency's service area is actually a voter. And so sometimes this is a method where you can really focus your outreach efforts to make sure you're reaching the people who are going to participate in making the decision about who serves in this role. The precincts here, I gave you a little map because that's another item. It's a way to organize how you reach folks. These are typically the precincts that are part of Montara and Water and Sanitary District. Those are the ones listed from the 2021 precincts. As was mentioned earlier, there's some rezoning and redistricting, redistricting that's occurring. So these might shift. They shift depending on the election and whether they consolidate. So it's useful to know them. The PowerPoint will be part of the record of this meeting and certainly is available. If anyone would like these resources, we can get a copy of this to you. So again, going through some concepts about outreach and campaign, because this is the other aspect. We've walked through calendar, we've walked through required filings, your statement and what you say about yourself in the official ballot and voter guide. But the other side of it, as Catherine mentioned, and I think a few of the directors mentioned, is the aspect of how do you reach the folks who are going to make this decision? And sometimes this is also about engaging your community members, your voters, in actually voting in this election. The good thing about the Montara election is it's part of the general election that tends to be your greatest population of voters because it tends to be large elections where many things are decided, including presidential elections. So that helps to get everyone focused, but you want them to go all the way down and actually vote on the local measures, the items that are really affecting your community. And those conversations can really engage a person to recognize that this district, that this agency is here and it needs to have its roles filled with candidates who can serve the community. So it's helpful to walk precincts as mentioned, or walk door to door, mail or drop literature, frankly, having things in hand. I've heard previously that some prior candidates posted large signage, including putting large signs in the back of pickup trucks and relocating that signage to their various parts of the district ahead of the campaign. Again, another low-cost way to do that so that you don't have to expend a huge dollar amount, but just putting visible signage up, making sure that people recognize that you're running and that they should look for you on the ballot. As Catherine mentioned, meeting voters at public locations, the post office, I think I said this, relocating signage throughout the district, posting at your home, attending the local meetings, Mid-Coast Community Council as one. There are other opportunities for the public to know who you are and to introduce yourself so that people can recognize your name and recognize why you're seeking the position. And again, it really promotes being involved in the community and the willingness to basically serve the community in an elected role. So the last person I would call on here would be Scott, before I just close after Scott with some final notes on post-election. But Scott, can you tell us a little bit of your thoughts on this whole topic and succession planning?
Certainly. Thank you, Allison. I want to first, I enjoyed hearing from Peter and Catherine and Jim. I want to say here to pretty much everything they said. Working with people here in the community to work on problems that are, honestly, most of the people in the community don't want to think about where the water comes from or where the water goes or even why the trash goes away. They just want it to work. They want the water to be clean and, to be able to bathe and wash clothes and cook and drink. And it's all very important that it just work. But some of the problems in trying to provide it all takes a team of people. And I count it as a great joy and an honor to have been able to work for all this time with such great folks. And even in the midst of strong disagreements, I would be quick to tell you that it is terrific to work with people who show up and invest themselves in working together to solve problems. We don't always have to agree. We'll get there eventually, but it's really worth doing. It's one of those things where, looking back, did we do good things? Did we do good things together? Did we do things that were worth doing? Yes. That's very easy to answer. And I can think of so many good experiences where it's just been really worth doing. I think it's real common to hear people griping about government, and there's no better thing to do with your gripe than to take it and try to do something constructive and useful with it. And it turns out there's people here, at least in our small community, who are willing to show up and sit down and put heads together and sort things out. I think every person on the board brings something special and different. I remember a while back, somebody accused us, the board members, of all being of one mind. It's like, well, no, I wish we were sometimes, but you look at Catherine with years of running a couple of commercial establishments, having to deal with very difficult corporate masters and challenges in dealing with lots and lots of customers in the retail environment. You look at Jim with his experiences in the medical field. Peter brings to us a financial background that he's just got a real eagle eye for details that I don't pay attention to some of the details the way that Peter does. And you take Rick, and he years serving on the Granada board and serving together with Rick at the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Board brings a wealth of experience as well. So you bring it all together and then you pair it up with staff, and we've got some excellent staff to work with. And we've had some tough challenges, some hard problems, and we can sit down and work on them together. And it turns out that you can tackle some really big stuff. For example, Clemens just kind of casually mentioned that in 2003, we took over the water system. Well, that was after a very long, many-year process to get that done, because the shareholder-owned corporation that owned and operated the water system was just bleeding the community dry, taking all the money away and investing almost nothing in the ground. It took a lot of work to get to the point where that could happen. And that was big. A small district like this, taking on a big multinational corporation that didn't just own one water system, but owned lots and lots of water systems. And for years, people were looking at us like, you folks are crazy. You're never going to get the water system. And now we've been operating it since 2003. And it used to be in desperate condition, and now it's in great condition. And that's because members of the public got together and met and talked and argued and voted, and together we took measures to the public to get support for raising the money and going out and buying the water company. this is the value of teamwork, and it's really worth doing. It's worth joining in. So that's part of why we're trying to encourage people to step in and join in. Some of us have been doing this for a while. You can see I've been at it for longer than I want to say. And while there's certainly a value in knowing the ropes and having a lot of history, I still remember when I was freshly appointed to the board and being really lost and thinking that I had to master all the details and read every single word. And it was such a relief to find out that it's a team and I can do my part, and that turns out to be a good thing. A couple of thoughts on the campaigning. One, I really want to weigh in that it's terrific. It's informative. And it's sometimes eye-opening to go door to door. Now, I know with COVID, that may all be different now, but the experience of getting out and deliberately trying to talk to every neighbor who votes, it's really, that was one of the richest experiences I've had, and really helped me feel a part of the community in a way that nothing else has ever substituted for that. Certainly meeting people at the post office is great. Getting to know people in their home context is great. Some people have called this a thankless job, and I am quick to say, and I'll say it often, it's not a thankless job. I can't tell you how many times I've been at the post office or the coffee shop, and somebody said, I know it's a thankless job, but I want to say thanks. Well, it's not a thankless job. There are a lot of people who know it's important. And now we want to encourage some of the people who are grateful to consider maybe it's time to step up and serve. One last thought is in the Attorney General's guide to becoming a public official, one of the things that it says is that, congratulations on getting elected. You're now a little bit of public property. And Allison talked about a bunch of the paperwork, talked about the financial disclosures. The financial disclosures that are important are the ones that might have anything to do with the conflict with the responsibilities in the public office. And it's important that any possible conflict be put on paper. It's really normal. I'll give an example. Rick Lohman, one of our directors who can't be with us tonight, but for a time now, as we've been meeting in closed session about a real estate matter, we unceremoniously kick Rick out of every one of those meetings because he lives too close to the property that we're talking about. So by being partially public property, we put out there, we're going to stay out of things where there might be a conflict. And so some of the paperwork is about getting that on the record and making it so that the members of the public can make sure that their business is being done by people whose interests that might conflict are right there on the table and well known. So in exchange for that, you get to participate, be part of the team, and do important work. And it's how many things do you get to do where you know that the work you do benefits everyone in your neighborhood and everyone in your community? It's something, please give this some consideration. Really, if you're interested, I know I and other members of the board would be eager to speak with you and to share with you from our experience about how you might step into this. You don't have to be experienced to start. All of us started out with virtually no experience in this realm. So please give it some consideration, and please feel free to reach out. Allison, back to you.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I do think it's one of the great aspects of a water and sanitary district. You literally touch the community every single day. There is not a moment where someone is not turning on a tap or watering something or running water to wash laundry, wash dishes, etc., using toilet shower, that this district and the work that it does is not touching members of the community. They may not realize it, they may not have made the connection, but the work that's done here is really what is ensuring everyone has a healthy and safe environment in which to reside and operate their business and enjoy the coastside. So it's really a tremendous tremendous contribution to the community to serve in these roles and to basically ensure that everyone has that service available to them. So let me just roll forward a little bit. So I did mention we would talk about what happens after the election. So once an election occurs for a candidate who, let's say, is successful, excuse me, the first thing that happens, let's say you won that election, what's going to happen next? The board here at Montara Water and Sanitary District, as an example, they have to, they will reach out to those elected, those newly elected board members, the staff will, they have to certify the election at a board meeting just to basically accept the election results and certify them. They invite those new board members and the former ones to attend. New board members will take that oath of office at a board meeting in December. And as I mentioned, if you are running a campaign, you've raised money for a campaign, you've got to make a choice of either maintaining or terminating those campaign bank accounts and maintaining complete FPPC filings. So again, benefit of not raising more than $2,000 for an effort of this nature means you don't have to file except for that first form on the campaign sort of a fundraising effort. You will still need to file that Form 700 on an annual basis. I think, so again, as I mentioned here, you must maintain or terminate a bank account if you formed one specifically for the purpose of your campaign for this office. And that's part of the FPPC rules as well. And again, that all goes towards the fact that they want to know where the money is coming from and what it's being spent on. So as a matter of disclosure and basically just transparency. Last thing here before we just open it for any questions is this is, as we said, we did this Elected Community Service Academy to bring information to the public, both in the live and in the recorded format. So we held the first academy in July of last year. We are actually now not fall, I didn't correct that, but we are here, I would say in winter 2021-22, which is the election process we just went through. We did contemplate doing a third session, which would be more of a recap and a reminder and potentially engaging some local youth or the community to run through what this would be from campaign to election to an actual meeting. So look forward for more of that as the coming months get closer. I think we'll be looking at something May, June. We'll certainly want to do something before the July filing period. So I think that is the end of all of the presentation, and we are here ready for any thoughts or questions. And that is mostly what the Academy has to offer tonight. So Clemens, I see your hand is raised. Oh, I also see Bill's hand is raised. Let's go to Clemens first.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. I just have a couple of comments that I want to add. I want to encourage anyone who is interested in running for office or interested in general in the Montara Water and Sanitary District to reach out to me, ask any question that comes to mind. Once I know that there is someone running for office, if there is new candidates, I will immediately reach out and offer the same once more. So there is also one campaign tool, I'm going to call it, that I don't think we have mentioned yet. The League of Women's Voters is hosting candidate forums that are well visited and considered by many voters. And so I would recommend to participate in those. There is a series of questions asked to each candidate, and candidates get a chance to present themselves and what they think about these certain questions. So that's a great tool that shouldn't be forgotten. Thank you, Allison.
Good addition. Thank you. Bill, I can see your hand is raised. You want to unmute yourself?
Right. Thank you for reminding me about unmuting. I haven't heard the name League of Women Voters since my mom mentioned it daily while I was growing up. She worked with, any rate. So this is a delightful presentation. you've introduced me to the machinery of government in as least painful way as possible, I expect, given how much machinery there is. And definitely gotten across not only the excitement of working on the board, but the other nice little tiny county offices filled with nice people. And I know from my mom that that is actually a thing. So when you say it, I believe you, because it seems almost mythical in the age of the internet. My question is something that you couldn't possibly have included in that general thing, which is roughly, is there a role for scientific insight on this board? I regard myself as an extremely competent biologist and physicist. And as I was looking at your map of the district, like, oh, those are all the water catchment basins. So I assume that those little rectangles on your map are based mostly around surface water flow. And I would love to understand how the water I drink is coming through the mountain and gathered and protected and things like that, and how the germy stuff that I excrete goes somewhere else and doesn't mix with it. And I might be able to help if, in fact, that sort of insight is part of what, I mean, I know it's technically part of what you do because you make the system work, but I don't know if board members' understanding of those things makes a difference or not. And that would be my campaign. I would campaign to be sort of a scientific voice rather than just a general nice-minded person who sits on committees, which is not something I have any particular ability in. But the science part I've got cold.
I think it's fantastic. And I would say I'm certain that either our board or Clemens have thoughts of this. I will definitely say that I think everyone brings a great, the background that you have brings a great amount to the role. And certainly a water and a wastewater agency this is much of what we did in our tour is try to get an understanding of what the challenges are, where the water comes from locally, how you manage that and treat it and move it to a wastewater, move it to a treatment plant. We also spend a great deal looking at, there's a future of your facilities and what choices will be made based on what the community wants to do. But I'm going to call on Catherine. I think she might want to respond and probably Scott next. But Catherine, you raised your hand first. So I am assuming you want to respond to Bill.
Bill, thank you for joining us tonight. The answer to your question is yes. And the answer to anybody watching this now, either now or later, is one of the things that makes a board good and great is a whole variety of skills and the ability to ask questions. I have noticed in watching politics at many levels that there are many people who are happy to give advisory comments and statements, but you need to be able to get to whether they're appropriate for your district and your district's interests. I never would have thought I would have much use. My husband and I ran McDonald's restaurants, and I was in education before that. What did I know about sewer and water? But I learned, and I really cared about public health and what it costs to live in our community. And so I will say that if anybody has any questions, my email is available, and I am so happy to talk to people. Unfortunately, I am so happy to talk to people for hours, so please feel free to say, time's up, I've got to go. So yes, and the last comment I have is one of the best, not only campaign tools, but decision-making tools, is to tune into our meetings every other week. Every single meeting, be here. We, number one, we really appreciate having people. Number two, you will learn a lot. Number three, you can tell us a lot because we don't do this in a vacuum. And that's one of the things that has been most difficult about COVID, is not being able to go out and meet people face to face and find out what their thoughts are on this. So yes, and please, our meeting is tomorrow night. Please join us. There is a public comment item or a section for every agenda item. And your comments are not only welcome, but very much needed. And I appreciate what you've asked. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Scott, would you like to?
We value expertise as applied to the things that we're wrestling with. I would, given your comment about the groundwater, the water supply, and the geology, I would note that Clemens has a background in geology and has co-published a paper. It's been a while, but with Mark Weishner and Barry Hecht from Balanced Hydrologics, entitled "Planning for Increased Climate Extremes and Strategies for Managing Groundwater Withdrawals from High-Yielding bedrock Wells in Coastal California." And the engineering and science work that has gone into the simple matter of where to try to sink a well, what's going to happen if we do, what happens if we're going to draw it down, what kind of water is down there, where does it come from, how old is it? Is it ancient water, like millions of years old, or is it something that's replenished on a regular basis? All of these are questions that Clemens and Barry and Mark and others have delved into, delved deep into, 800 feet deep at times. So I would urge you first to reach out to Clemens and see what kind of materials we've got. I think the paper, we've got some terrific reports that have been part of how we look at, find, and assess the water resources. And there's a lot. There's a bunch of documents on the website, but I would recommend starting with Clemens or any one of us board members. We can put our fingers on more than you're going to read in a couple of days.
Jim.
I'd like to make a comment about the Form 700. You shouldn't let that scare you. They don't want all your retirement funds and investments. They just want things that may be of a conflict within this district. So, you don't have to put all your bank accounts or stocks. You don't have to put all that stuff. You just put what may be of conflict. So for me, it's very short.
Thank you. I don't think I'm earning enough money to make a conflict with anything. So I'm
Okay, good.
There you go. I was going to mention before we sort of close out the Academy portion of the evening that, again, there are videos. Clemens mentioned on the website, there's a video that's a tour, a virtual tour of the district. We also did 2 strategic discussions that focused on looking forward on the water side, where water supply and securing water supplies for the community. Should it, if it's growing, you might need to consider securing more or looking at alternative recycling, et cetera. So there's a lot of information in that, and as well on the wastewater side, because they are sort of the strategic discussion about what the community wants. So they're probably very interesting topics, and the videos should be accessible again through the website, or we can certainly email them. So I think with that, I would say that's unless there are further questions from anyone, that's the end of the presentation. But again, I know we're all here to answer questions and would love to speak more if the topic continues. So, but I'll turn it back over to Scott as president.
So let's see, I'm realizing now I need to get the agenda back up in front of me, and I don't have it. I don't think we have anything else on the agenda. So if we have nothing else on the agenda, I think adjournment is the next item. Looking at Allison, Allison is nodding. Yes, thank you. So hearing no objection, thank you all for joining us. This meeting is adjourned.
And let me put another pitch in for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
It's 7:30. We are going to be discussing what we can in public. It's certainly about the lawsuit from Half Moon Bay against the rest of us on the coast, that including portions of Half Moon Bay, that was filed on June 11th, 2017. So we're looking at 4.5 years. There's other fascinating stuff, I would also say, and we always appreciate your comments. And it's right here at your friendly Zoom. The agenda's online. And so it's easy to get to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Night.